This ushers into what I call a new era of medicine. If you can reduce insulin resistance, all those diseases that I talked about become to dissipate very, very quickly.
Hello and welcome to the Wellness Zone podcast. I'm Mary Perry and I'm here with Dr. Barry Sears, and today we're going back in time to talk about the history of drugs. So Dr. Sears, we are going way back in time, so it sounds like we're starting around 3000 BC, is that correct?
That's right, and really with almost the beginning of written history, because now we find out, looking at the ancient Egyptian and Summarian texts, that they were basically using a wide series of botanicals to treat chronic disease. And probably the most widespread one was basically willow bark. Now, what is willow bark? Well, it's obviously from the bark for the willow tree, but it's very rich in a particular chemical called salicylic acid. And that was one of the wonder drugs 5,000 years ago. But they had other things, such as herbal medicines and spices. Not to make food taste better, but spices because they were a source of polyphenols. So that was basically medicine for the next 5,000 years. Wasn't much to it. The next breakthrough was really the 19th century, when Louis Pasteur came up with the germ theory. And everybody said, Louis, you're the greatest chemist in Europe, but you know nothing about medicine. It's caused by bad gas. He says, no, it's caused by germs. And he had to fight for his entire life before it was accepted. But again, once the germ theory was accepted, then it said, okay, now we can find out about infectious diseases, things such as things that we could treat now with antibiotics and vaccines. But we still had the problem with chronic diseases. And that only basically began to solve differently with the introduction of drugs, true pharmaceuticals, in the 20th century. And they did some very significant work, but it kind of stalled out toward the end of the 20th century. So we can now look at from where we are today and say, where are we and where are we going? Well, where we are is, if we look at the best-selling drugs, they were all developed in the latter part of the 20th century. And what are those? Well, the best-selling drug in the 20th century was statins. Now, how do statins work? They lower cholesterol, okay, but how? It's magic. It's not magic. Statins lower cholesterol by activating AMPK. That lowers cholesterol. Okay, let's take a look at another best-selling drug of monoclonal antibodies for treating rheumatoid arthritis, things like Humira. Now, how do they work? It's magic. No, it's not magic. They're just simply monoclonal antibodies that bind one particular cytokine, and that reduces inflammation. But there's another way we can reduce that same cytokine without using Humira, and it's activating AMPK. Oops. Okay, how about another one? Metformin, the primary drug for treating diabetes, which is escalating at a very rapid rate throughout the world. Okay, how does metformin work? I don't know. Well, we now know how it works. It activates AMPK. And really starting to see a trend here. And finally, we get to the only kind of new wonder drug in the 21st century, Ozempic. It's good for everything. Why? Say, I don't know. Well, the reason it's good for everything, it simply stops hunger. If you stop hunger, you activate AMPK. So I think you're seeing a certain trend here going, that we've learned through the 20th century and the first part of the 21st, that if you can activate AMPK, good things happen. And that it becomes what I think the future of drugs are.
So Dr. Sears, let's get into the future. How are we activating AMPK?
Well, we activate it by the diet. Okay, I'm on a diet. Say, no, read my lips. We're activating it by a diet, and a diet that's very defined. And I use the term metabolic engineering. We're using food as if it were a drug to change the expression of our genes in every one of our 30 trillion cells. Say, that's impossible. Say, no, it's quite possible, but you have to keep the food in a consistent ratio like a drug, and use it on a consistent basis like a drug to do that. Now, if you do that, what chronic diseases would be impacted? Well, let's go through it. How about obesity? Okay, well, that's because if you activate AMPK, you burn fat faster. Type 2 diabetes. If you activate AMPK, insulin resistance goes down, and basically blood sugar levels also go down because now you're able to pull glucose from the blood into the cell more effectively. How about heart disease? Because AMPK lowers cholesterol, it also lowers inflammation. Cholesterol doesn't cause heart disease, but increased inflammation does. We can also look at kidney disease. These are all diseases highly associated with insulin resistance. There's fatty liver. There's autoimmune diseases, things like multiple sclerosis, rheumatoid arthritis, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, other neurological diseases like ADHD, and most importantly, aging. It's saying, how's it possible that simply one molecule in our body can do all those things? Because that one molecule is the master switch of metabolism, and all of these are basically disruptions of our metabolism.
So really anything that's got a root in insulin resistance or inflammation where AMPK activation can help, you're going to see a benefit.
You are not only a benefit, but a striking benefit. That is, we talk oftentimes about the therapeutic index. That is, we give a drug, and too much of the drug, it's toxic. Too little of the drug, it doesn't work. Now, as far as I know, at last count, the toxicity of diet is 0. So some benefit divided by 0 is a very, very big number. Now, this ushers into what I call a new era of medicine. People sometimes call it functional medicine, saying, yes, each person is individual. So I'm going to basically look and basically get a certain degree of unique therapy for them. Okay, it doesn't basically lend itself to mass practices, but in theory, it's quite correct. Everyone is different. And so what you're looking to do is now personalize the future treatment of a person by their blood chemistry. Not looking for a problem, but looking for levels of insulin resistance. If you can reduce insulin resistance, all those diseases that I talked about become to dissipate very, very quickly. And so people say, but I'm using vitamin C. Great. Or I'm using vitamin K2. Great. Here, go to Dr. Google, put in the word of your disease state or your vitamin, put a comma behind it, and put AMPK. And then hit the push button. And all of a sudden, you're going to find all these references saying, yes, your magic vitamin basically activates AMPK. Your magic mineral activates AMPK. Oh, I'm exercising. That activates AMPK. I'm doing yoga classes to reduce stress. That's activating AMPK. So we have a central theme going forward in the future. Anything you can do to activate AMPK, it could be a vitamin, it could be a mineral, it could be going to yoga classes. They're all good, but you really need a much more comprehensive program to keep it activated all the time. And that's the foundation of metabolic engineering. And it's composed of 3 parts. The first and most important part is calorie restriction. Oh my God, I'd rather die than go through life being hungry. Okay, how about calorie restriction without hunger or fatigue? Oh, I could do that. Good. Well, that's why I wrote about 30 years ago in a book called The Zone. How to do that, and basically not how to do it, but it's a patented technology. And what you do is basically you have to restrict calories, but you have to maintain a ratio of protein to carbohydrate at every meal to keep the metabolism in that zone. Second thing, you need adequate protein at every meal to stop hunger. That's going to be about 30 grams of protein. Not less, but not much more. Because if you've basically taken too much protein at a meal, I'm going to eat my 72-ounce steak, you're going to basically shut down AMPK. And I'd also say, but what do I balance the protein with? It's what your grandmother told you. You can't leave the table until you eat your vegetables. Which ones? The ABCs. Things like artichokes, asparagus, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, cauliflower, spinach. Why? They have the right ratio of protein to carbohydrate. You can't foul up. And so there you have your number one tool. Now, what else can you add to that tool? You add fish oil. And that's going to be about 2.5 grams of omega-3 fatty acids every day. Now, I'm going to say, well, I'm taking my fish oil capsule, saying, well, good. Plan to take about 6 of them. But that's too many. Say, then don't take them at all. You're getting nothing for it. Because you have to reduce inflammation along with the calorie restriction to basically turn back the hands of time. And so these are the two primary things. And kind of like the cherry icing on the cake, get some polyphenols. Oh, I love berries. The reason you love berries is because they're full of sugar. That's why you have to eat a lot of vegetables. They're not quite as sugary, but that extra sugar in the berries is going to do you far more harm than good. So that's the basic aspect of metabolic engineering. How long do I have to follow it? For the rest of your life. Say, read my lips again. The rest of your life. And so basically it's a lifetime intervention that goes back to the beginning of medicine 5,000 years ago. It's saying, if I can find things in nature, like food, and have the right combinations, I can control my metabolism. And by doing that, I can control my future.